Good morning, y'all. Welcome to Tuesday, June 11, 2024, Public Health and Safety Committee meeting. For a roll call, I am Peter Agabi. Lieta?
Hi, I'm Lieta Dahlhoff.
And Kelly?
I'm Kelly Von Holtz.
Okay, so we're all here. So can I get a motion for approval for a minute for the Public Health and Safety meeting for May 14, 2024?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, so that passes. So we have item number 4, the Intergovernmental EMS Contract Funding and Amendment number 2, SWAT Medic Fire Department.
Yeah, it looks like Sean must be, Assistant Chief Crimmins may be having trouble with the link getting on.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to go ahead and, I don't know if you want to start the other item and we can go at the end while we sort that out.
Okay, all right.
My Zoom will pop up.
Okay. He said he's having trouble getting on the link. If you want to do the other presentation, I don't know if we could ask that the link be resent to Assistant Chief Crimmins.
Yeah, I will
Okay.
do that.
Okay, and then we can just go at the end then.
Okay, so for item number 5, we have 2023 police data by the police department.
Great. Good morning, council members. Let me get the presentation up and running here. All right, you should all be able to see that, correct?
Yes.
All right. So this is the 2023 annual review, if you remember. I guess you don't, Kelly, or Councilmember Von Holtz, because you weren't here before. But about 3 years ago, the council or the committee requested that we bring back an annual review of the activities of the police department. So that's what the purpose of this is today. We'll be going through, as you'll see, all the various different things in the police department, the budget, personnel, staffing levels, administration, and you can see the list all the way through, including some 2024 legislation. I'd ask, please feel free to ask questions along the way. I can't see all of you on my screen, so please feel free to interrupt if you have any questions as we go along. The one thing you won't see in here, but I did provide to you in your packets, was a 2024 organizational chart, and just gives you a different view. We'll still cover that, but it gives you a different view to see how the department is laid out. So we will move on to the next slide. So what you see in front of you is a slide of the police department budget. For you, Councilmember Von Holtz, this is new, so I'll go into a little bit of depth for you. You know, when you talk about the police department budget, 96% of our budget is allocated funds. We really only have 4% of the budget that we, so to say, have any movement on what we spend or don't spend. You know, you can see 53% is salaries, 22% is benefits, fleet and IT is 11%. We have jail, that's 3%, and software, that's 2%. So really every single year we stay right pretty much in the 96% range that is allocated funds. And in 2023, we had a $9.4 million budget. So moving on, this is a new slide for the committee. You know, one of the things the committee asked for was more data. And so we want to present some new looks for you. So what you see in front of you is an overtime chart that we track every year. And I have this going back to 2007. And what we're looking for is, excuse me. What we're looking for is trends. What's going on? We look at, you know, is there really highs or lows? And we do this every year. So like when you look at this comparatively over the years, in 2023, you'll see our annual leave went up quite a bit compared to 2019. And that's annual leave coverage. And a lot of that has to do when we changed back in 2021 to 24/7 supervision. So every time a sergeant is gone, it requires overtime to cover those shifts. So that's why you see things like that. You also see down in our training, how the training over the last couple of years has skyrocketed. And that's because of the unfunded mandates coming out of CJTC with police reform. While great training, it's how do we get our job done and still serve the community? And most of that you'll see is reflected right there in training. So what you see there in overtime really is what we do. We track it obviously in quite a bit of depth. And we're just watching trends year to year to make sure there isn't anything that we're missing or ways we could be doing business better. All right, the next slide is talking about personnel. Again, you saw this is where the org chart would give you a different view of this. But what you see here is, well, let me move something here. Oop. Okay, so what you see is in the number of positions we have in the police department, we have 43 total positions. 34 of those positions are commissioned people. 2 are limited commission. That would be our service transport and code enforcement officers. And then we have 7 support staff. In 2023, we had personnel changes. We hired 5 new people. 3 people departed. 1 person moved across the country to start a business on his own. 1 person left the department on a medical resignation, and 1 person retired after 6 years of serving with TPD, but 27 years total service. So, and in 2023, we ran 14 different hiring processes. All right. So moving on to admin staff activity, what you see in front of you are some of the numbers that our support staff do behind the scenes, so to say. They provided 652 cases to the prosecutor's office, 1,123 firearms transfers and concealed carry permits, and 1,362 public disclosure requests. In the slides that follow here, you'll get a historical look at this, and I'll give you a little bit more information on each of these. So you can see here over the years, since 2019, the number of cases we've transferred to the prosecutor's office. Again, big spike in 2019, obviously the COVID years, the court shutting down, jail shutdowns for several years, or pretty, not totally shut down, but quite a bit. You see those numbers really drop, and they started leveling out in 22 as everything started to open back up more. CPLs and gun transfers. What you want to take from this is this slide shows you the numbers. But if you will look at the gun transfers and process, you see from 2022 to 2023, it dropped to 833. That's because in the late part of 2023, WSP took over by law all gun transfer backgrounds that we used to have to do. So you will see in 2024, that will go down to 0. And that is a huge workload off of our staff. Obviously, you can see in 22, we processed 1,200 gun transfers. And that's a tremendous workload. Next one is public disclosures. And one of the things you'll see, you heard me a second ago say we had 1,362 public records requests. One of the things about our records management system that is nice is we have what's called P2C, which is a public to, or police to public or police to citizen website where most of the collision reports, the public and mostly insurance companies can go in and obtain the records themselves. Up until about 5 years ago, we used to be able to get a report of how many reports were being obtained online. But since then, since the company's been bought out a couple of times, We're not able to get that report anymore. But at the time, it was about 1,200 collision reports a year. So when we say public records requests coming into the police department, it's about 2,500 plus records requests a year. But one of the things is you don't want to get caught on the number, especially when it comes to public records requests. Really, the thing we want to look at is the time. How much time? Because some records requests we can handle in a matter of about 5 minutes. Some of them can take several weeks, depending on how big they are. So, I mean, a good example of that is in 2019, we only had 938 public records requests, but it took 473 hours. In 2023, we had 1,362 and actually took less time, 403 hours. So it just kind of a different way of looking at comparatively speaking. The city purchased a public records software, and to give you guys kind of an example of just comparatively, the police department pays 87% of that bill because we handle 87% of the public records for the city because they mostly deal with police. Peter, did you have a question? I'm sorry,
Yes.
Councilmember Agabi.
Yes, so Chief, thank you. For the public disclosure request, on a higher level, do you have a pattern of what kind of items the public really request for on an ongoing basis that are repeating patterns? And if you don't have it, you don't have to answer.
I'm not sure I understood your question. Are you asking what is the most common public records request?
Correct.
Laura, can you answer that?
I sure can. So most commonly our requests for case reports, and then anything that goes along with the case reports. So one of the things that we've been seeing since the advent of body cams for other departments is that now most people, when they make a request for a case report, also want our in-car camera video. So that takes a lot longer to prepare and to upload to the system. So it's been a big addition to our workload. But that's the majority of what we do, our cases and all the records that are associated with a particular case.
Thank you.
Great.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, we'll keep moving. Here's the court documents that our department handled. These are obviously the arrest warrants, the civil service papers, and the protection orders we receive from the courts and have to process into the system and maintain. And you can see in 2023, we processed 1,140 court documents, which is, and you can see comparatively over the history of it, we hit it right on with 2019. You can see the lull as everything shut down through COVID, and it's starting to pick up again. Now we'll get into calls for service, and this is really our patrol division. What you see here are a couple different charts. The one on the left, or at least the one on my left, is 2023, we had 18,865 calls for service. This means the community reached out and called us about, and you can see on the chart on the left, we had 117 different call types in 2023. But the chart on the left or on the right shows you the top 5 types of calls that we received. To give you some numbers, the suspicious activity was 1,823 follow-ups. These are the community asking for follow-up contact from our officers was 1,345. We had 1,331 different traffic complaints, 1,049 welfare checks or public service requests, and then we responded to 843 alarms. And you can see, obviously, the chart on the left, again, is you can see the lull in COVID when everything was shutting down. And what you will see is our calls for service going up as we're coming out of it. Interestingly enough, in the next slide, self-initiated activity is anything else that our officers do that isn't generated by a call from the community. And you'll see a continual slide down on that graph to the left. And that really is about police reform and resources. We've talked to the committee before in the past about police reform and the need it's taking more officers and more calls. Well, as we are tying up our resources, there's less time for them to be proactive in the community. And so that's what you're seeing there in that. And on the graph on the right, again, we had our officers were involved in 76 different types of proactive activity or self-initiated activity. In the top 5, they conducted 1,604 traffic stops, 1,566 business checks, 1,513 area checks. That means that they may drive through the retail corridor, and instead of getting out and making contact with the business this time, they just patrol through their parking lot. Or, we go into certain high crime areas and we may not contact anyone directly, but they call out in that area as they're working. Councilmember Dolph?
I feel like we're so in sync because every time I'm like, oh, I have a question, you literally go in and give me an example.
Okay.
I don't know if this presentation or this day can get any better because I have no questions. This feels very uncomfortable because you're answering all my questions.
Well, good. I'll try to keep on that. Follow-up, we did 1,039 follow-ups, self-initiated follow-ups, and then they self-initiated, contacted 860 individuals involved in suspicious activity. And putting the two together, you get the total patrol activity. Again, you can see the high in 2019 at 35,000. And then as we went into COVID, police reform, and a lot of this has to do with the jails and courts and those things all together. But we've kind of plateaued in 21, 22, and 23, right around 30,800 total activity. So arrests, the chart on the left, what you're looking at, that's a big drop from 904 misdemeanor arrests to 184 felony arrests. What you had back in 2019, and Councilmember Dahlhoff will recognize this, was we had a lot of traffic enforcement, specifically driving while license suspended arrests. And that's why you see that really elevated number. Since then, the laws have changed, and our approach to driving while license suspended has followed those changes, and it dropped off. And then, of course, with COVID and the several years of the courts and the jails dropping down, you're just seeing the arrests numbers drop down. And now you're starting to see them as we come out 22 with the courts and jails picking or opening back up. You're starting to see that start to climb again a little bit. But I fully doubt we'll return to the 904 misdemeanor arrests, not for some time. But the chart on the right is top 5 arrest categories. In 2023, we arrested 151 people on arrest warrants, 82 for assault 4, 32 for violation of a protection order, 28 for trespassing, and 22 for DUI or physical control. In 2023, you can see obviously our traffic stops dipped quite a bit. And that again goes back to what I said earlier about just not proactive activity or self-initiated, just their availability. They're handling a lot more calls for services, and it's taking more resources, and they don't have as much time. And again, because of staffing levels and that, oftentimes we have to take our metro or our traffic officer and have him backfill road coverage. So he's working patrol calls. So that's what you're seeing in that chart. So we'll move on to our investigation division. In 2023, they had 282 assigned cases. 47 of those were investigation assists by detectives. 61 were incident reports that the detectives initiated, or 172 incident reports that were assigned to detectives to investigate further. On top of that, our investigative division has many other duties or additional assignments. They conducted 38 background checks. Every time we return a firearm or somebody wants to do a ride along with one of our officers, we have to do background checks, and our detective division does that. They handled 50 public records requests. They handled 150 plus prosecuting attorney requests. This is where the prosecutor asks for additional follow-up or information. When they need that, they contact our detectives. The division handled 15 employment background investigations. They received 119 adult protective services referrals. Of that 119, 50 were investigated. 30 CPS referrals, I'm sorry, Child Protective Services referrals, and 23 were investigated. They were involved in 5 community presentations and 20 community events. So our detective division is a very busy division. Comparatively speaking, I believe on the next chart, you will see that, oh, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. Here's some highlight cases from 2023. You can see the arson at the Brewmaster House they were involved in, self-storage burglary, an embezzlement, serial fraud case that ended up going international, hit and run death investigation where a subject was struck, a pedestrian was struck up on Tumwater Hill, and the golf course burglary where someone broke into the golf course pro shop and took many items. And the detectives actually were able to solve that using cell phone records to identify who the suspect was. All right, SRO incident data. This is one of the things that we've frankly struggled with a little bit trying to put into context, but Dr. Bowers, who unfortunately couldn't be here today, was able to capture more information and put it into something we can present to you. So I'll go through that right now. So the chart on the left shows you the grade of the involved individuals our SROs dealt with in 2023. Obviously, you can see they dealt with 53 elementary school incidents, 57 middle school aged incidents, and 120 high school age incidents. And that's why you see our SROs are assigned to the high school and the middle school, and then they get to the elementary schools when needed. But usually they are so busy between the middle school and high school, they don't have a whole lot of time other than when they're called. Obviously 4 former students and 1 incident involving a staff member. The chart on the right, though, is the one I think that I thought was most interesting, because it really shows you the type of incidents our SROs are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. You know, you can go through there. The highs are really student welfare, behavioral issues, just spending time mentoring students with advice 111 times. They were involved in assemblies, meetings, or school events 126 times, doing drills and walkthroughs, safety type events 47 times. And then you can just see the different types of criminal activity or potential criminal activity. I think the telling thing is on the next slide, though, when we get into how they're resolved. You know, of the activity you had, our SROs only initiated 44 of those. The school activities or activities in the school resulted in 339 of those activities. So you can see there's not a lot of, it's more calls for service, for lack of a better way of saying it. Our SROs are responding to the demands of each school. But the resolution on the right is, I think, the one that's really telling, and I think this is what Councilmember Dolph, you've been looking for a while. See, we're connecting again. You can see 43.6 of all incidents are handled and resolved by the school, not by our SROs. 29.7% are resolved by counseling. That may be our SROs, it may be the school counselors, could be the school administration. 9.3% is other. 9.1% is resolved with some sort of police report. Nobody's arrested or anything like that. Most likely these are incidents where there's information and we send it to the juvenile prosecuting attorney's office for review. 7.8% are resolved with the family. And then only 0.5% of all of our contacts in the schools result in arrest. So when you hear these national stories about all these arrests in the school, that isn't the case in Tumwater. You know, we've talked about that for years. Our program, arrest is the last thing we want to do. And these numbers reflect that. All right, we'll move on to evidence. In 2023, we received 1,093 items. We disposed of 883, and we currently have 8,777 items in evidence. As you can see at the bottom of the slide, one of the things we've seen in the last 3 or 4 years, and a lot of this is through the courts and changing gun laws, a lot of guns have to be turned over to the police. And this is kind of cyclical, but we are experiencing and continue to experience limitations for guns. Councilmember Dolph.
Chief, I know in the past we've talked about some forms of evidence, like drugs and stuff like that, like pharmaceuticals, that then were taken to the Spokane Waste to Energy facility for incineration. Is that still happening with law enforcement? Is that the process?
Yes and no. Yes, it's still happening, but no, we don't go to Spokane anymore. We've moved to Oregon. And so,
okay.
yeah, the Spokane incineration location was shut down. And so we had to relocate to a location in Oregon. But yes, when we get in the pharmaceuticals from the community, that is where they go. They're sent down to an incinerator in Oregon.
Perfect. Thanks, Chief.
Yep. One of the things you will see in the next slide is this really talks about how the process of evidence, you know, when you see the bottom 2 chart lines, those are really how many items we receive and how many are ready to dispose. And you can see it's pretty consistent over the last 4 years. What you see up above, this is one of the benefits of COVID for us. And that was our ability to dispose of evidence. With COVID, there was a slowdown, especially in the courts. And a lot of our ability to dispose of evidence has to do with the court paperwork we get. And the courts were so far behind, and we didn't have the time to research. Well, with COVID and everything slowing down, it provided us that ability. So in 2022, you can see we disposed of 3,000 items. We normally are in the 700 to 900 range per year. But in 21 and 22 total, we did almost 5,000 items we were able to dispose of using that downtime, which is huge as far as space goes in our evidence room. So that's really one of the benefits during that time for us. All right, we should have put this slide at the last because, you know, every time we talk about canines, the presentation's over. But this is our canine teams. As you're aware, on the left here, Officer Mize and Canine James retired last week. Canine James was in his 9th year, and Russ was at 23 years and well-deserved retirement. But for 2023, you can see Canine James had 6 narcotics deployments and 6 detections. He had 13 deployments where he tracked suspects with 1 contact. That contact was a armed assault first, suspect who's hiding along I-5. We chased him from the Tumwater High School football game. One of our SROs had spotted him. He ran over along I-5, bedded down in the brush. K9 James detected him. Officer Mize provided several warnings because he could tell by K9 James' actions that he was close. The suspect did not surrender. It couldn't be seen. So K9 James was sent into the thick brush and engaged the suspect in there until the officers could follow him into where he was at. And then the suspect was taken into custody without further incident and provided medical treatment. K9 Thor in 2023, this is his first full year. And he had 16 deployments with 0 contacts. And both of those are well below the national standard of contacts. So our officers do a great job of using the tool appropriately. All right, training. We talked about that a little bit earlier when we were talking about our overtime, but the cornerstone to any successful police agency is their training program. We train all the time, and obviously we've discussed this for years, why we train as much as we do, and a lot of it's mandated. But I want to give you some numbers about training. You can see the chart there. It talks about 1,775 internal hours. Internal hours, to give you an idea, a little bit more information. Each year, or in 2023, our members had 57 hours of internal training, which covers firearms training, defensive tactics, patrol tactics, and other topics like legislative updates, prosecutor domestic violence updates, less lethal, CPR, bias-based policing, use of force, ABLE training. I mean, several things fall into the other category. But that's what the 1,775 internal hours encompass. The 1,569 external training hours, this is really about instructor development and recertifications. It's about career development, succession planning, sending officers to the basic law enforcement academy, and really going into high-risk areas. In 2023, our staff went to 40 different external courses. In 2023, we sent 4 people to the Basic Law Enforcement Academy, and that was 1,874 hours. And this is the number I think that sometimes gets lost and we have to reflect on, and this is the field training. So as the officers come out of the academy, and when we talk about staffing, for every officer we're training, that means another officer is with them. And so that's tying up actually 2 officers for 1 person on duty, if that makes sense to you. And we spent 1,210 hours training our new officers in 2023. And then you can just see we added SWAT and K9. SWAT had 661 hours of training last year, and our K9 had 332 hours of external training. And this just gives you a different graph, a different view of the training over the years. And you can see really our internal and external training in 2021 really jumped up. And in 2022, 2023, it started to plateau again. You know, again, in 21, right in the middle of COVID, while classes were not really easy to find, we did have more time to send officers and did a lot of virtual training. Councilmember Dolph.
Yeah, thanks, Chief. I know in the past we've heard from you and staff, like, how are we supposed to do our jobs when there's so much training? Like, how do we balance that? Do you feel like it's getting better, or it's an ongoing challenge?
It is an ongoing challenge.
Okay.
And you saw that earlier in the overtime charts. You know, we're really paying a lot more in overtime to meet our obligations. And you know, a lot of times it's a drain on staff. You know, we all do this job and we cover for each other, but it takes a toll.
So part of
and-
that strategic growth, chief, right, is like
Yeah.
building in that capacity would also then alleviate the burnout, the stress, the overtime, right? Is like, it's all connected.
Now you're answering my next line. Yeah, you're exactly right. And we're gonna get into that tonight. And it's a great,
Right.
I'm just gonna say the same thing. Because that's a huge component of the strategic growth plan. And getting back into, you know, you and Councilmember Gabi were there when we talked about the staffing plan that talks about all of those things that led into the strategic growth plan. So yeah, we'll get into that tonight.
All right, thanks, chief.
When we talked about, I mentioned a little bit earlier, how many instructors we have. Here's the different specialties that we have instructors in. You know, we have 3 patrol tactics instructors, 4 defensive tactics, 3 EVOC or emergency vehicle operations course, our driving instructors, less lethal instructors, 3 firearms instructors, 3. And then our field training officers, we currently have 6 patrol that are certified field training officers. If we have to, we can expand past that. We have 2 others that are in specialty positions back in detectives. And then all of our supervisors are FTO certified. So just give you an idea. And all of these certifications have mandatory training to them, recertifications. So move on to code enforcement. 2023 was a tough year. This is one of the persons I mentioned earlier who unfortunately went out on a medical resignation. And so we were down to a half code enforcement all year officer, but we did well. In 2023, we opened 32 new cases. We closed 28 and we have 16 pending cases. This was our 6th full year in code enforcement. And as we've talked about before, it is a citizen complaint driven process. And we often work in tandem with other city departments. And I know this is a topic that is due to come back to the council because we really, as a city, need to have a larger conversation because there are a couple of really big cases and we need to decide as a city what we want to do with code enforcement. And with that, you know, it takes funding, unfortunately. So we've been very successful, I believe, in working with people and helping them work through things. But there are a couple big cases that need to come back to the council. All right, community complaints or citizen complaints. In 2023, we had 3 citizen complaints. The findings you see underneath there, exonerated and unfounded. Exonerated means the incident happened, but the officer's actions were either justified, lawful, or proper. And then unfounded means the alleged acts did not occur or did not involve Tumwater department members. Frivolous complaints would also fall into this category. So the first one we received was a conduct. We had a complaint of an officer failing to document and proper report writing and endangering the victim. That was found to be exonerated. All the officer was there. They did deal with the person who complained, but all of their actions were lawful and justified. In number 2, there was a conduct or use of force. There was an allegation of sexual misconduct, excessive use of force, and failure to provide medical care. We were able to, investigation determined that none of those things occurred. There was no sexual misconduct, there was no use of force, and that they were provided medical care. And then the last one, number 3, was unfounded failure to preserve evidence. There was evidence in the case that they say they didn't have that we did. To give you a historical look, here's what it looks like over the last 5 years. And as you can see, other than in 2019, we don't get a lot of citizen complaints, and that's really, you know, a testament to the professionalism of the men and women of Tumwater PD, you know, and how we engage with our citizens. Relationships are important to us, and they do a great job of engaging with our community members. Here's a good little different one we wanted to show you. So when we talk about the activities of officers, you know, unfortunately, we get involved, our officers get involved in what we call citizen incident or accident situations. And so we wanted to show you something a little bit different. And the window on the right talks about some of the things that our officers have had happen while they've been doing their job. You know, one of our officers damaged a chain link fence when they're climbing over it, chasing somebody. Another officer's vehicle was struck by somebody. We had car window broken by less lethal munitions. This is somebody at the end of a traffic stop or pursuit, or during the conduct that refused to come out of the car. You know, you go through all the de-escalation. Eventually, when they continue to refuse to come out, then we will introduce pepper ball into the car. Getting pepper into the car will usually drive them out. Sergeant was unable to remove a backpack from a suspect. He was handcuffed. It was a dangerous suspect. We were not going to take him out of handcuffs to get his backpack off him. Unfortunately, the way the backpack was, we couldn't get it to release the straps, and so he ended up cutting it off of him using his scissors. An officer's patrol vehicle sustained damage when it struck a deer. Unfortunately, that happens. Here's one that happens every once in a while. An officer left a suspect's cell phone on top of his police vehicle and could not be located. When we're arresting somebody, a lot of times not a lot of times, every time we search an incident to arrest, and we try to put things in bags. Sometimes they want their cell phone. We may provide an opportunity to call. The officer then sets it on top of the car while they're finishing other things, and they forget it. And unfortunately, we realize it usually by the time we get to the jail or wherever they're going, and we go back and look for it. Most of the time, it's either already been run over or we can't find it, and the city replaces them. We try not to do that, but it does happen. And the last one of our sergeants was injured while struggling. Multiple officers struggled to detain somebody who was in a mental health crisis. So kind of just gives you a different view of the things our officers involved in through 2023. We're getting towards the end. The next one is the internal complaints. These are complaints or investigations we conducted based on things that happen within the department, possible policy violations. The first one you see there is a use of force in conduct. This was sustained. A sustained finding means the investigation disclosed there was sufficient evidence to establish that an act did occur and that it constituted misconduct. In this case, it was improper use of force and insubordination, and it resulted in termination of that employee. Number two was an off-duty conduct. This was a third-hand complaint that we got from another police department. And based on it, it was a harassment type complaint. We asked the Thurston County Sheriff's Office to assist us, and they completed the investigation. It came back unfounded. Again, that means that the alleged acts did not occur or did not involve department members. In this case, with the harassment, we were unable to determine or find any policy violation. And here's your historical view of the internal complaints. As you can see over the years, you know, usually 1 to 3 internal complaints a year. Again, that's really a testament to the command staff, to all our members, you know, just the way we conduct business and the professionalism in the agency. And, you know, we've talked about over the years why hiring is so important, and hiring good people. All right, this is a new slide for you. You know, unfortunately, we do have to fire our weapons over the years. You can see I think about 98% of these, one of the things we do is we often have to put down deer. They get hit by cars is usually the majority of them, and they're gravely injured. And the last thing we can do is have them coming, staggering back out into traffic and causing another collision. And so our officers are often have to put deer down, and they use their firearms to do that. So historically, almost all of these are involved. A couple of things that happened in 19, we had a less lethal shotgun was used to breach a car window. And then we had one accidental discharge of a taser in 2021. Otherwise, it was all dispatching deer. Last slide. All right, in 2023, we tracked 70 bills through the 2024 legislative process. And 14 passed and majority became effective on June 6th. The two we picked out were obviously the big ones. Initiative 2113 was the vehicle pursuits. In reality, this really doesn't change much for us. Obviously, what we can pursue does, but our pursuit policy was pretty restrictive before the pursuit policy or the pursuit law came into effect. So when it changed back, we're not changing a whole lot. Yes, we can now pursue for any type of law violation. However, it will go back to our training and before. It really is about why are we pursuing? What is the danger to the community? All the things that the pursuit law introduced, we were already doing and had been doing for years. And so we'll go back to the same practice. If there is a necessity to pursue somebody, we absolutely will. But it is a constant weighing of the circumstances throughout the pursuit for us. So it really doesn't change much, but that did go into effect on June 6th. It does provide us the ability to pursue the people we need to, though. And so that was a great change. And then the other one is the House bill or the Senate bill 6009 having to do with hog tying. Again, this is a practice we haven't used in several years, but some agencies were still. And this is people that are really kicking and biting and being destructive while they're in custody. We used to use what's called a hobble, and we would wrap their legs up and cuff 2 clips onto their handcuffs to tie them up. Unfortunately, there's the positional asphyxia that we worried about, and we really went away from this several years ago, and we went to what's called the wrap, and this is a way of I'm losing my words right now. This is a way to wrap them up, for lack of better terms, safely in a seated position where their hands and legs and everything are, they're not able to move, but it's done so without putting them in medical jeopardy. And obviously, anytime we put somebody in the wrap, we continuously monitor them. It's not put them in the wrap, put them in the car, and then you don't pay attention. Anytime we have somebody like this, it's constant monitoring because they're often may have a medical issue that we need to continue to keep track of. So while this was new for a lot of people, again, it didn't change anything for us. One of the concerns in the early part of this bill, though, was the way the language was. It had a very strong possibility it was going to take the wrap away as well. And a last minute change brought that back in. So with that, I will stop sharing and open it up to the council members if you have any other questions.
So I do have one quick question about the wrap, Chief.
Yep, go ahead.
So we don't have a 2024 data because it's a current year. And you said that has been ongoing, that has been the police department practice before now? Am I correct?
I didn't understand your question. I'm sorry.
Is it the RAP practice, has it been done with us policy before now until now? Which means is it ongoing?
Yeah, we've been using the RAP for several years, and anytime we put somebody in the RAP, we do consider it a use of force, and it is reviewed every single time we use it.
So in this several years, has there been an incident of somebody going to cardiac arrest or having an emergency medical incident as a result of the RAP
No,
that you recall? Okay,
no.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So on that note, I'll say you're done, Chief.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. And we will cycle back to the intergovernmental EMS contract funding amendment number 2 for fire department. Chief.
Yeah, good morning,
Hello.
council members. Sean Currens. I had to do the old shutdown and reboot, so IT could be proud of me this morning. But we're here, so I'm going to share my screen with you guys. Can everybody see the screen? Perfect.
Yes.
So what we're going to talk about real quickly here is an amendment to the current ALS contract that we have with Thurso County Medic One. So this is amendment number 2. Just for clarity, this was a contract that was originally signed back in 2023 with Thurso County Medic One that goes through 2025. So what this amendment is really what we're talking about is SWAT paramedics. So first I'll kind of describe what the SWAT paramedics role is on the SWAT team. And really what the SWAT paramedic does is provide patient care and has the ability to provide advanced life support to first and foremost the SWAT team members. So they do kind of tend to work in the warm zone, if you will, where the SWAT team is being active on a SWAT call out. So they are able to provide for any of the law enforcement officers or any of the other SWAT team members that initial first aid, advanced life support. They also are able to provide that very quick support to the suspect if there is a use of force or if there's an incident, along with any other patients that happen to be related to that incident. And then the last part that they do is they are able to help out in support roles, and that could be any number of roles, using the drones, helping out with other things. So it kind of depends on their training and their level of support within that SWAT team. The role that the Tumwater Fire Department plays is certainly we will provide a paramedic if needed. Currently, we are not. Just for full clarity, we did have recently a member that was on the SWAT team for 12 years and recently decided to step away. So currently, actually, there is no actual paramedic in the SWAT team currently. They do have one of the ER emergency room doctors is a member of the SWAT team, but they are looking to add some paramedics here soon. But currently, we are not providing any paramedics. There are other things that we tend to do if our paramedic is involved in the SWAT team is support them in the training. They do monthly training. Obviously, the responses will assist with making sure that they can get out to those responses if they are on duty. So what is this contract amendment? Really, all this contract amendment is it's with Thurso County Medic One to provide a reimbursement to the city for that SWAT paramedic. So what Thurso County does is they provide up to $25,000 per SWAT paramedic, which is basically one per ALS agency. And when I say ALS agency, that's Olympia Fire, Tumwater Fire, and Lacey Fire District number 3. Each agency can have one. You're not required to have a SWAT paramedic. Like I said, right now we currently don't. And if we choose to not provide a paramedic moving forward, that $25,000 that Medic One allots to us would actually go to, for example, Lacey Fire District 3, if they ended up having 2 of their paramedics be on the SWAT team. So we're not tied to being required to have a SWAT paramedic. What this is not is it's not an interlocal agreement with any of the law enforcement agencies, with any of the SWAT teams. So this is, and it does not cover any of the operations or any of the job description related to being a SWAT paramedic. This is strictly an amendment, an agreement for basically a reimbursement process for us to get paid back for these SWAT paramedics. So with this, like I told you, it'd be very quick. Recommended action, we'd love to have this placed on the intergovernmental EMS contract funding amendment number 2 with Medic One on the July 2nd City Council consent calendar with the recommendation approved and have the mayor sign. And with that, be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Peter, I don't have any questions. It's straightforward and I'm in support.
Okay, so on that note, can we get let's move into the city council's July 2nd consent calendar resolution or any motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Okay, that passed, so that will be moved to the so that will be placed on the July 2nd.
Sorry to interrupt. Could you please take a vote? We have a motion and a second.
Okay, Leanna?
Aye.
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 Thank you.
So, thank you. Sorry about that. So, that motion passes and this item will be placed on the July 2nd, 2024 council consent calendar. So, having said that, we will go back to our agenda. So now we're now at additional items.
I'm good for today.
Same.
Kelly?
I don't have anything additional.
So the only additional item that I think was worthy of discussion is the ongoing email that I've gotten several iteration of, and that has to do with the incident that happened in Tumwater. Don't know about the exact date, but it's about a driver driving a white truck that has at least if I read that email correctly, a pattern of yelling racial epithet at a minority resident in Tumwater. And for what I have found out, there's actually an altercation that has happened between this particular driver and a Tumwater business owner who happens to be Black. And I know 2 meetings ago, I asked the chief what we were doing about this incident. And at the time, I believe I was told that the police department would do something about this incident if they know of it or are aware of it. So, Chief, I guess my question is, what has been the disposition of that particular incident? Were there any investigation, or do we know who this person is?
So we do not know who the person is. The information you just presented is not entirely accurate. There's a lot of different stories out there, but we did look into it. There were no criminal acts that occurred, despicable acts for certain, but no criminal acts. So at this point, we don't have information to investigate further. But yes, we definitely reached out to both the business owner and to the other people involved. Some engaged with us, some did not.
So now, a while back, maybe 2 meetings ago, I talked about I asked the question if the Tumwater Police Department have a community policing policy or program. And I was told that community policing program is it's integrated with what Tomatop Police Department does. Now, having witnessed this, having been notified of this incident and having been aware of such incidents, because given my I have been here now 18 years, and in those 18 years, while I haven't had such incidents happen to me in particular, I have had a guy followed me and my wife back in 2009 in the same particular area, that around Thai restaurant. That's where the guy kind of followed us into that gym out there. I would like the police department at least to consider having some kind of an active community policing program, more so in the data that you presented, Chief Wicks. That data, there were some citizens complain, although not significant. We need to find a way to be very proactive to make sure that our residents, whether they live here or visiting, are safe and happy to be in our city. I do understand that there's a lot of stuff happening on the national stage that has emboldened some people, but that's okay. But we should not be in a position where we couldn't do anything about this kind of incident, or we should not be proactive in trying to portray ourselves as, hey, look, we live in a beautiful and safe community where if you come here, if you are law-abiding, if you do what you're supposed to do, you are safe. So, Chief, I would like to see us have an active police community program that is I don't know how that program is set up or structured, but I would like to see one.
Well, Councilmember Gabi, I guess I don't know how to answer you. You tied in a lot of different things into this, and the issue you're discussing is much bigger than the police department. But with that being said, community policing is not a program; it's a philosophy, and it's about engaging your community, and that's a core value of our police department. And we spoke about it earlier during this presentation. You know, community policing is something we do every single day in every contact we make with everyone. And so, you know, every engagement is an opportunity to continue to build relationships. So when you say a program, this is what we do every day. This is a philosophy in how we engage with our people and our community members. You know, we can go deeper than that. You know, we have our Tumwater community, and then we have our daytime Tumwater community. You know, our retail quarter draws a lot of people from outside this area. And we've talked to the committee before, when you look at our use of force numbers, you know, we have people from all over that aren't even necessarily part of our community that are here during the daytime. So we engage with all those. But ultimately, you know, when we talk about these actions, you know, unfortunately, you know, we're bound by the laws of the state of Washington and the Constitution. And while the acts are very deplorable and abhorrent, they don't necessarily always equal to a criminal act. And so, you know, when we're out and we talk about proactive policing and things like that, you know, there are certain things like the individual and what happened the other day. You know, even if our officer had been present, I don't know that they would have had the legal justification to even make a traffic stop. And those are the laws that we're bound by. And so I don't know that there's a great answer, but you know, it's a bigger discussion. I know Councilmember Doloff has talked about community tolerances and things like that. I believe that's 100% correct, but that is much beyond just the police department. That's a city philosophy. That is how all parts of the organization engage our community. And so I think it's a much bigger discussion than just the police department. City Administrator Parks?
Well, can I just add to that before Administrator Perks speaks as a committee member? I appreciate Chief's comment, and I also appreciate Peter, right? Because it's a yes and. And so I'd send an email with the multiple dates that I have had interactions and engagement. And so what does that look like? And I was going to bring that up tonight in the work session regarding linking the police report to an overall culture and what we will tolerate and what we won't as a community, right? And so I would like to continue that conversation tonight as well and ongoing. And I really miss the community forums we used to do because a lot of the stuff would come out in these meetings and trust was built, right? So we get a lot of comments like, if we don't know, how can we do something about it? But what are we doing with like Chief's line of being proactive in that engagement and council members being ambassadors for our community and conduits of information to help our police be successful and to help them build that respect and trust with our community members? I think that's where council comes into play as well to support everyone and build those connections, right? The police can only do so much, but how can we help them be successful and engage and build trust? And what can we do, right? There's the law and then there's behavior, and I think they're linked. And I think there's some things that we can do with, in the police report, the strategic plan talks about the social, the platforms, the ways to engage. Those can be conversation starters, right? That we can say, we're not going to tolerate this. You're not breaking the law, but you're not going to do that here, right? We're going to make it really uncomfortable for you. At least I will. So Peter, I appreciate you bringing that up, and I hope this is an ongoing conversation.
Thank you. Lisa, please.
Yes, thank you. I truly appreciate the conversation. I want to support Chief Wicks in his work and the police department in their work. The impression and the information that's been shared with me that I've observed about how our community feels about our police department, which was probably most on display on February 12th, when there were about 120 people in Tumwater High School Commons who were not happy with the city generally, but really very supportive of the police department. I feel like what we are hearing is that our police department is well respected and there is a pretty high level of trust, and that there is only so much that they can do. And I think they're doing a good job. On the other hand, Councilmember Dahoff, you mentioned behaviors, right? Or cultures in your email. Those are the things, I think, those are the programs that go above and beyond and outside of just the police department. You know, we're working internally on our DEIB strategy. The management team meets and discusses DEIB every month, and we are working on those internal processes and systems that we can try and make improvements. And then there are opportunities, but we need to understand what those opportunities are, or those preferences are from the council for moving forward. We're moving forward with other DEIB activities that we can, and things that we can do as a larger community outside of just the police department to try and find a way to address the issue, because it is uncomfortable, it is abhorrent, and it is intolerable in many ways. And the police department is one way in which the response can be made, and we need to find other ways in which to be proactive in addressing the issue as well.
Thank you. Kelly?
Thank you. And Lisa, I appreciate that. And I do have a lot of respect for Tumwater Police. And there are ways that we can kind of have more of a community involvement. On Saturday, there were over 100 community members that walked with Erin Jones, who was the woman who had this racial epitaph thrown at her. And Lietta, well, Councilmember Dahoff and Councilmember Jefferson and I all attended, but as community members, not as necessarily City of Tumwater representatives. And so I think this is an opportunity, these types of events that are in our community. I understand that Dog Days was happening at the same time, but it would have been nice maybe to have a representative from the city, maybe maybe someone from the police department just stopping by and showing that presence that this behavior is happening in our city and we don't like it and we're not going to put up with it. So I do see opportunities other than the police being called and an arrest being made or not being made for us to kind of show up for our community.
I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So on that note, do we have any other item from anybody? No? On that note, Chief, I thank you very much for actually addressing my comment, because it takes a village to raise a child, and that's a start. And hopefully it's something that we will continue to talk about and hopefully have some meaningful resolution down the road. So thank you for doing that. On that note, I wish you guys have a great day, and then we will see some of you in the evening. We are adjourned. Thank you.